last Tootie Tale. Our subject today is the paving of the Upper Valley Road, and it's quite interesting how this all came about. Those of you that haven't lived here can't imagine what life was here like here 40, 50 years ago, but it wasn't very pleasant. And in the spring, the roads were impassable because of the frost that came out of it and the mud that appeared on the surface. And then in the later June or early fall, we had heavy rains and the roads would be underwater. And movement in the valley was extremely difficult. At any rate, we do have a tale about the Upper Valley Road because there were certain circumstances that brought this thing to a focus, and we'd like to just sort of relate this to you. I have to admit that our presentation couldn't contain all of these details and information because you'd be here for 2 days. But so we've abbreviated to give you an overview of just how much effort some of these people put into this particular cause, and it was a cause. So without further ado, history of the road.
The Upper Valley didn't see a lot of settlers until the late 1800s. There was some interest in settling as there was talk of a railroad up the Hurley and into the interior. Duncan Morrison had a ranch near Railroad Pass, and he would walk to the post office 15 miles away along the twisty road. The first valley road was built in 1903, but it was poorly constructed. It was thought that a good road would bring in settlers and develop the area. The road meandered and followed the rivers. The first major change was to put the road through the Miller property. The biggest change came in 1946 as a result of the flood protection work. They diked and straightened rivers. The water levels were lowered and allowed the road to be relocated, some on the dikes. The road was the connection for the farmers, the small lumber mills, and the pole cutters. In the late 60s, a large stud mill was built in Mount Currie. Timber licenses were granted and large-scale cutting in the Upper Valley began. This meant a steady procession of trucks. At the same time, the road to Squamish had been improved and paved to Whistler. This also meant that trucks could haul from the bush to the water without using the railroad. It was reported that there was a truck every 3 minutes, night and day, at the busiest time. This traffic created an intolerable situation, and the dust hung in the air like fog, choking the animals and people alike. The only relief came in the winter when it snowed. Everyone suffered from the dust, which covered plants, horses, cars, and crops. Kids got sick, people were choking, nothing was clean. Until Popeye would have put it, "I've had all I can stand, I can't stands no more."
The dust would not leave, and visibility on the road was very poor. Driving was risky as the big trucks were not easily seen until the last minute. All residents, including the truckers, feared for their safety when on that perilous drive to Pemberton. Something had to be done. And, as characteristic of the area, someone stepped up to the plate and took charge. That person was Betty Connell. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Betty and the kind of person she was. It will give you some insight into her character and why the government never had a chance. Betty Connell hailed from Ontario. She served in the armed forces during World War II. She was in charge of a supply office and had 30 or 40 girls working for her. She married after the war and sometimes in the 60s moved to Pemberton. She and her husband Neil had 2 children, Kathleen and David. They settled up the valley on a small farm by Michael Ross's and had the usual chicken, pigs, and cow. And their pig was let to grow, and he was the size of a cow, and I didn't know that pigs didn't stop growing. Over the years, they planted asparagus and sold the product in the spring. Her husband worked for the highways department and drove taxi cab at night. Farms are expensive to run, and Betty took a job as library assistant in high school. Her office managing skills were put to good use as she managed the library and looked after the books. Later on, she became the school secretary and had the job until she retired. Having been a part of the big fight in World War II, she was not afraid to take on an adversary. I must tell you this story because I think it whetted her appetite for the big battle heading her way. Back in the late 60s and early 70s, we had had a series of very cold winters, as low as -43, colder up the valley. The cold spells lasted for weeks and life went on as usual as people dealt with this frigid cold as best they could. Except the elementary school. The principal and staff would not accept this cold as an excuse to be improperly attired as young ladies should be. They insisted that girls dress as girls should, skirts and no slacks. They also insisted that the children should remain outside until the bell rang to let them in. As some children arrived early, they were outside for 20 minutes at 40 below. Needless to say, there were a lot of frozen girls. Betty had a daughter and was furious that a dress code would not be flexible enough to allow for comfort and safety in extreme situations. She organized other parents, wrote letters to the board, and I think threatened the principal, and I think to paraphrase her, she said, "Look, you little shit, you ought to get those kids out of that cold or you're really going to know what trouble is." In the end, knowing that they were facing a tenacious opponent, they backed down and allowed the girls to wear slacks or snow pants, and also allowed the children to get back into school early.
Back to our story. Betty became concerned that a truck would hit a school bus in the choking, blinding dust. The threat of an impending tragedy lived with her every day, and it was a source of worry for all the parents with kids traveling on the bus. There were 34 children riding the road twice a day. Betty took it upon herself to produce a flyer and put it in every mailbox on the Meadows Road. It read, "Citizenship goes far beyond voting, paying taxes, sitting on a jury, and the other duties expected by a nation from its members. Properly conceived, it involves all a man's actions which touch his fellow citizens and affects the health and well-being of the state. It is almost coextensive with his duty to his neighbor. The ideal state is one where every citizen is determined to be part of the community, to share its burdens, to put its interests before its own, to sacrifice, if need be, his own wishes, convenience, time, and money to it. A man who invades his taxes is so far a bad citizen. So is the man who would be useful in local government but evades the burden, not because he cannot, but because he will not spare the time." So she called a meeting. The meeting notice read, "Meeting of all residents of the gravel portion of the Upper Valley Road on Betty Connell's front lawn at 2 p.m. on Sunday, the 28th of May, 1972, to discuss and put into effect the course of action open to us to achieve paving of the Valley Road." They had the meeting and formed the Pemberton Valley Dust Committee. The members were Betty Connell, Dorothy Ernst, Tony Spetafor, and Mary McCubbin. Gus Stewart agreed to act as chairperson of the committee as Neil worked for the Highways Department and the committee did not want to jeopardize his job. Brian Ross agreed to act as liaison for the logging companies. Doris Van Beem counted the logging trucks and came up with the statistic that there was a truck every 3 minutes, night and day. An analysis of the dust by a local landowner, Dr. Dill, showed a level of 27% silica. Acceptable levels of silica in a mine were only 7%. Eldon Talbot took pictures from his helicopter of the 20-mile dust cloud. These were copied and sent to the Ministry of Highways, the MP, the MLA, and anyone who counted. DeCook, Burritt, Lundell, McCormick's. The truckers agreed to join the campaign and gave documents of taxes paid, stumpage, gas taxes, and any other expenses they incurred by which the government benefited. The documents were submitted to the proper government agencies. A letter was sent to the district engineer in North Vancouver suggesting the road be paved. This was the reply. "With reference to your recent telephone call to the Deputy Minister of Highways, we advise that the district will be paving 3 miles of road this summer and that a further 6 or 7 miles will be treated very shortly with liquid calcium chloride.
It would not be possible to extend the paving this year, as improvements and reconstruction would have to be carried out to the 6 or 7 mile section.
So they met to form a delegation which would meet the minister, Wesley Black. They sent a telegram, but he declined the meeting.
A telephone call was placed June 8th, and Mr. Black agreed to meet in Victoria at 10:30 a.m. A meeting was held that evening, and Sitzel Ross, Mary McCubbin, Tony Spedifar, and Betty Connell were selected to go. At that meeting, they were read the letter from the district engineer. Thank you for your letter and photograph of the 30th May 1972 concerning the hazardous conditions of the above noted road.
Please be advised that the district has a continuous program of trying to pave this section of the road, and it is our plan this year to pave an additional 3 miles, with additional pavement next year. Also, from the end of the pavement, the department will be undertaking a dust lane program with liquid calcium chloride over a 4 mile stretch and dust lane oil over a 3 mile stretch. This we hope will alleviate the dust problem created by the heavy logging trucks. And Ken Greenway was CC'd on that.
Ken Greenway was the local highways superintendent at the time. Thank you for your letter of 30 May 1972. We wish to advise you that the Pemberton Valley Dust Committee rejects the proposal to pave only 3 miles of the Valley Road this summer. Also, the application of liquid calcium chloride. We intend to discuss this matter with the minister on Tuesday, 13th of June at 10:30 a.m. in his office in Victoria. And it was signed by Gus Stewart, Chairman, Pemberton Valley Dust Committee, or PS. The maps of this area refer to this highway as number 171. The team went to Victoria and met with Mr. Black. The team came away with a mutual agreement.
Lengthy discussion was held with the minister in his office with our delegation the morning of the 13th, and it was mutually agreed that paving would be extended to the residents of J. Schmuck. Mr. Black has kindly given us his assurance of this via a letter which he signed in the presence of our delegation, and a copy of it is attached. They returned home and soon received a letter from the minister. Dear Sir,
Repaving Pemberton Meadows. We plan to pave 10 miles of the Pemberton Meadows. This will take it to the farm owned by a man by the name of Schmuck. This is the last farm, and dust layer is not needed beyond that point. But we will investigate this, and if there were some needed, we will apply it. Work on hauling of the gravel for the paving will commence immediately. Yours very truly, Wesley Black. Of course, they were overjoyed and delighted with the outcome. They quickly sent off a reply to the minister.
Honorable W.D. Black, R.E., Paving, Pemberton Meadow. The Pemberton Valley Dust Committee wishes to thank you graciously receiving our delegation in your office of 13th June 1972. Our membership is pleased to have your written assurance that the Pemberton Meadows Road will be paved and the hauling of the gravel for this paving will commence immediately. It is most gratifying to note that the paving will be carried to the last farm, which is owned by Mr. J. Schmuck. Again, thank you.
It appeared their persistence had paid off. Soon, an article appeared in the Vancouver Sun which said,
Pemberton, the clouds of dust that rise from a 10-mile unpaved stretch of Pemberton Meadows Road are about to settle permanently. Pemberton Valley residents who have cussed the dust for years, branding it a health and safety hazard, will soon be able to breathe easy again. The section from Ryan Creek north to John Smuck's farm will be paved. 4 women representing the Pemberton Valley Dust Committee got this assurance Tuesday from Highway Minister Wesley Black.
the saga of the paving of the road involved many hours of research, documentation, and effort from a great number of concerned citizens and parents. It proves the power of one and power of many. The Dust Committee certainly has earned a place in history, and who knows how many lives their efforts saved.
And today the road is much as it was when it was first paved, but thanks to the efforts of the Dust Committee, it is dust-free.